Good morning or good afternoon, I'm sure where we are now. So this panel is about proof of stake versus proof of work. We have a really interesting panel. I think it'll be an interesting discussion. My name is James Haft. I'm the co-founder of Crypto Oracle and Crypto Mondays, and recently formed Pacific Alliance Limited, which is focused on the introduction of distributed ledger technologies to Fortune 500 companies and the tokenization of assets outside the United States to create liquid markets. I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves, and then we'll start a little bit of the technology and explanations of proof of stake and proof of work, and then move into a conversation about why the differences matter and how the applications would work, with the idea of trying to focus on why this matters to people who are trying to employ the technology and who are actually in business. Could I ask quickly, how many people in the room consider themselves techies? Ooh, okay. And how many of you in the room consider yourselves businessmen? And we have a crossover, I like that, okay. All right, so let's start. Nigel, you want to start? Just introduce yourself briefly, please.
Sure. Hi, I'm Nigel Clark. I'm from Hedera Hashgraph. Hedera, can we introduce the company? Hedera is the enterprise-grade distributed ledger with a number of key services, file service, crypto, and smart contracts. We are driving to be stable through a core governance process, core governance council, and we're driving to be fast and fair and secure. Fast, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of transactions per second with finality in seconds.
Monica?
My name is Monica Quaintance, and I am with a project called Kadena. Kadena is a hybrid blockchain. We have a private blockchain and also a public proof of work blockchain. And we also have a smart contract language that has been written specifically for blockchain.
My name is Edward Tate. I work at Nomadic Labs, and we work on the Tezos core technology.
Patrick?
My name is Patrick Dai. I'm the founder of Qtum blockchain. It's a proof of stake smart contract platform. We have more than 50 applications building on Qtum blockchain. Yeah.
So the core of any of these platforms is their consensus engine. So I thought each company would first talk about just the concept behind their consensus methodology.
Sure. So Hedera is known for its, as I said, faster finality, and we achieve that through our key consensus methodologies about gossip with virtual voting. So, for example, in our consensus mechanism, we have people can talk to people across the network, so Bob will talk to Alice, and everyone will talk to everybody, and the network achieves fair time stamping via taking a median time from when that was received, and then we get virtual voting and gossip about gossip via the ability, every single message contains the message itself plus a hash of the history of the last message. So everybody across the network understands exactly what's going on, and therefore you get immediate virtual voting and immediate finality from the network.
I'm a professional consensus protocol engineer, and that still did not make any sense to me.
There's a great, we won't have a fight, by the way. There's a great white paper on Hedera, if you have a look at it, about gossip with virtual voting, and it explains everything.
Okay.
Start from a positive perspective. We represent.
Right. Sorry. So Kadena has two blockchains under the hood that then connect to each other. A private blockchain is basically makes assumptions about being a faster tendermint, and its failure condition, it reverts to tendermint. And then our public blockchain is Nakamoto consensus, so your traditional Bitcoin block mining, but we have multiple chains that are all running in parallel that then communicate with each other. So still proof of work mining, but with a little twist.
We use pure proof of stake, basically. We have a custom algorithm that's called EMI, and it's essentially based on tendermint, and that's basically how our consensus works.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people really understand the details of the consensus. The consensus is always the hardest part for all the distributed network. Yeah, it's an area many scientists are working on maybe more than 50 years. Yeah, Basically, like Qtum is like a simulation of the Bitcoin, like a proof of work consensus. But we replaced the hash power with the amount of coin you are holding. So all the others is kind of simulation of the Bitcoin proof of work. Yeah, but it's more energy friendly, like more scalable in long term. Yeah.
All right, and so Monica, why don't you start with why does it matter? Like, why do I care if I'm a business person, I'm trying to employ a new technology to change my business? Why do I care if the vendor comes to me with proof of stake or proof of work solution?
If you're a business person and you're looking to take your existing business and do something with the blockchain because you think the blockchain is cool, don't. Don't bother. It's not worth your time. It's just going to be messy. And you might as well just use a private blockchain because it's just like a database. It's just a better database. Don't bother. Don't bother getting involved in public blockchain because it's just going to be a huge mess and you're going to expose yourself to potential risks. But if you're interested in actually doing something transformative and connecting to liquidity markets and people that you never would have been able to connect to before and have significantly reduced fees and faster settlement times and all these things that public blockchain does promise, then you should start caring about whether you have a system that's actually decentralized or whether it's just a system that ends up aggregating wealth back to the people that run the system. Because if you're just going to aggregate wealth back to the same people that started your system, you might as well just give your money back to JP Morgan.
I didn't understand that from a business side.
So, Patrick, why don't you jump in? If you explain to me what the disadvantages are of proof of work.
Yeah, the proof of work, like it's a lot of disadvantage, but it's a tradition of the industry. I mean, it's the classic design of Bitcoin. So personally, I think when Satoshi Nakamoto designed Bitcoin, he cannot find a better choice. I mean, all the other like consensus is far more complex than the proof of work. The proof of work in theory it's the easiest one to implement at like 2008. Yeah. And all the other BFT or PBFT or like other consensus, there's a lot of mathematics and behind that. We even have like maybe 3 Turing Prize for this area for computer scientists. So it's a very complex like consensus for I think even for Satoshi Nakamoto at that time. Yeah. So he chose the easiest one. Yeah. But the proof of work is kind of waste a lot of resource, the disadvantage, and it's
I
also
disagree with that point.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's also very good for currency. So if you are designing a currency, I mean, proof of work is still the best choice because everyone got the same like opportunity cost. You have to lose some money, and then that's kind of the support of Bitcoin's value. Yeah, everyone lose money by mining. Yeah, I mean, this opportunity cost is the same for everyone. Yeah, but for proof of stake, people do not really have the opportunity cost. Yeah, if I'm a developer, I can write like a 10,000 Qtum or like a 10,000 currency like for the developer. Yeah, no cost at all, just a line of code. Yeah, but all the proof of work coin, you have to waste the electricity, use the real resource in the real society to mine the coin out. Yeah, so that's a big difference.
Rather controversially, why does it matter? From a business angle, why does it matter? Who cares? This is technology. Who cares? At the end of the day, what we care about is it fast enough? Is it fair enough? Is it stable? Is it secure? And even more controversially, is there great governance in this? But
Why are you even on a proof of work versus proof of stake panel?
Wait a minute, let's work out what this means. But from a business angle, what it means is, at the end of the day, where proof of work versus proof of stake means is what's the business outcome? Is it fast, fair, secure, governance, etc.? But to my HCM line of business person who's got a problem hiring people, finding the best people with the best credentials in the right place at the right time, they don't care whether it's proof or stake. What they want to know is this enterprise grade? Is it stable? Is it going to drive my business? Yeah, when I'm thinking about my head of service, trying to find the right service technician, the right place at the right time, we don't care whether it's proof of stake versus proof of work. Is it stable? Is it secure? Has it got fair governance? When I'm looking at my supply chain and I'm trying to think about from a supply chain executive angle, from a finance angle, what's the provenance of those goods? Do I care about the war between proof of stake, between Kadena, between Hashgraph, between Quantum, etc.? I don't. What I care about is can I extend my ERP, my HCM, my EAM, my core business, and link it to these new markets and drive outcomes that are meaningful using this new technology? If it is fast, it's the proof of stake or proof of work. I have a particular view that, quite often proof of work isn't the right way to go. It doesn't have fair ordering all the time, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody's going to love that. I actually believe proof of stake is a better model, and particularly with virtual voting from Hashgraph, because it does give us that speed, it does give us that fairness, it does give us that stability, and it does give us that governance, and you do get to finality within seconds, which is enterprise grade and what the line of business really needs. And at the end of the day, proof of stake versus proof of work is all about that.
I guess we can all go home.
Come on, be more specific.
Well, I mean, it seems like you don't care whether it's proof of work or proof of stake. I, for one, don't even think that Hashgraph really works because it's based on a similar model to traditional trading systems where, sure, you can have your test cases running the hundreds of thousands of transactions a second when your transaction is just a ping that doesn't contain any real significant transaction data. But what happens when you have a bottleneck, when there's one node that contains a piece of information and everybody has to go and come back and reconcile with that particular node? You get what we call in trading land the everybody trading Apple problem. And
we don't actually have that issue.
Okay. So, Monica, you have purposely built in proof of work into your platform and solution because
proof of work is beautiful. It is elegant. It is a way that anybody, anywhere in the world, any grandmother in Ukraine who has a computer in her closet could potentially be the next block leader of one of the most valuable currencies in the world, which is totally mind-blowing and absolutely changed the paradigm in a way that, when 1972, when Leslie Lambert came up with the Byzantine fault-tolerant problem, and then we came out with all these solutions like Paxos and Raft and voting, these all require some sort of knowledge about who you are and who's participating. And the way in public blockchains you analogize that with, oh, well, I'm holding a lot of this coin, so obviously I care about what happens to it, so I'm not going to screw with the network. But that means that you gradually accumulate more and more and more coin, so that eventually you just end up with this handful of people that are holding all of the power and holding all of the network, and then we're not decentralized anymore at all. But proof of work, anybody can participate anywhere in the whole world. It's really magical. And the whole Nakamoto consensus, it's so simple. And everybody who says, oh, we're burning away all of the world's resources mining Bitcoin, first of all, economic pressure forces people to find the cheapest electricity they can, which is electricity that's going to be burned away anyway and not ever going to be used. It's like 80-something% of all electricity in the world that's used for mining Bitcoin, hydropower within 20 miles of a hydro dam that otherwise never would have been used. So it's not like we're actually burning away any resources mining Bitcoin. Instead, you get this amazing, stable technology that you basically get for resources we wouldn't have used anyway.
Yeah. I think for the proof of work, it's when you compare with the proof of stake, the proof of work have some advantages. The first one is usually it's more fairness. Everyone got the same opportunity to participate in the mining from the very beginning. So it's more sometimes it's more fairness when you compare to a lot of proof of stake coin. The stakeholder control the interest, control the economy model. Yeah, and the second advantage is kind of it's more sometimes it's more decentralization because Monica said, everyone can access a network and have the possibility to book the ledger for the whole world. Even you are using a personal computer, you can book the ledger for everyone's transaction. So I think that's the two biggest advantage. But the disadvantage is I think there's one reason. It's earlier we didn't choose proof of work. Is we are struggling to figure out because as everyone knows, for the proof of work, if you are not the biggest in your algorithm, SHA 256 or Ether hash or Equihash, they developed their own algorithm. So if you are not the biggest in your own algorithm, you are facing a lot of dangerous attack vector, the 51 attack. It's very easy to make that happen. Even for Bitcoin, Satoshi Vision or for Ethereum Classic, classic. If you want to attack the network, it's only cost maybe $20,000. You can reverse the whole blockchain. So that's the biggest like a disadvantage. So otherwise, you need to develop your own like algorithm. You need to work with the ASIC company. You need to do a lot of work. So you need to be the biggest in your algorithm, then you are safe. Otherwise, I think you are in danger. People didn't attack, that doesn't mean like they do not have the ability to attack. If someone want to attack like Ethereum Classic, it's very, very easy. Maybe $20,000, you have a longer chain than all the current blockchain. Yeah.
Patrick, oh, sorry, Edward. So your platform is moving towards Tendermint. So you must have been having issues previously that you wanted to resolve or improve, right? So what were the issues that you were facing in the real world that made you look for a new solution, and what are you improving by moving to Tendermint?
Well, it's more that Tezos provides a way to evolve. So basically, developers can propose new code on the network, and people, so the token holders can vote for these new proposed changes and incorporate them. So the idea of moving to Tendermint is simply that it's a proven model. It has papers that actually come with security proofs, whereas what we've defined, the EMI protocol, hasn't got so many proofs right now. So we're proposing it more to kind of increase the safety, essentially. So.
And how does the decision between proof of stake and proof of work impact the important qualities that you're looking for: security, speed, integrity? Is there an impact there from the different?
Yeah. So you can participate in proof of stake just as much as you can participate in proof of work. So this idea that it's kind of closed is really dependent on how it's implemented. So
don't you have to have like 10,000 Tezos or something in order to be participating in the process?
Sure, but you have to pay for a machine to participate in mining. So you still have to pay for something in order to participate in any decentralized network.
Opportunity cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But they're like $500 or $1,000 for a machine to participate in mining.
Sure, but then, the price of Tezos, we can change the amount, the size of the role, so the amount that someone has to invest initially, and that's based on what the community decides. If the community decides that it should be 10,000 US to be a staking node in the network, then that's...
But the community is never going to decide that, because the community is made up of people that hold Tezos, and people that hold Tezos don't want other people to be able to come in and vote on things. They're going to always make that number a bigger number to shut out people that aren't already in the network.
Actually, no, because if you look at the current proposal, for example, it reduces the cost of entry to Tezos, so it's not actually...
I guess people are nicer than I guess that I would think.
Perhaps.
All right, we definitely have some. So in about 5 minutes, I'm going to open up to questions, because I think this probably is an audience that has questions. How do your platforms handle change? Because I'm assuming that we're at a point in the development of the technology where we don't really know what the final answers are. We don't know proof of work versus proof of stake. This question of forking and governance. And so who owns the platform, and how do changes come through your platform?
Yeah, so Hedera is well known for having a global governance council. I mean, one of the key things that we did when we set up the network was make sure that it was not just enterprise grade from speed and stability. Stability is really important, but having a governance council with a set of committees that start to determine, what the policies are around crypto, what the policies are around how we're going to manage assets, securitization, and things like that. So we have a governance council. It manages change through the governance council. It consists of up to 39 global industry leaders on an up to 6-year term. So there's no centralization. It's changes and changes and changes. And our goal, frankly, because enterprises change the whole time, is to use this governance council in order to be able to drive stability and drive change.
Wait, so this council, say that they all agree on doing a thing, then how does that actually change Hashgraph? Is there somebody writes some code and then pushes it out and everybody just accepts it? Do you have to accept it? Is it just forced on you without?
So Hashgraph does not have a seat at the council. The technology company that underpins Hashgraph has one seat at the council.
How do I join the council?
How do you join the council? If you are an industry leader, then you can join.
So not anybody can join the council, basically.
Not anybody can join the council.
Wait, I'm still not clear on how the code changes based upon what like 39 suits somewhere around the world say
Well,
is happening.
Well, the 39 suits around the world. Well, it's exactly the same. They might turn around and say, okay, so we need the public ledger needs to go in this direction because that's what we think it should go. And then from there, then we will drive the change into the code. Exactly.
Wait, who's we? Does this mean that somebody controls?
Some developer, yeah.
We control, absolutely. So we own the code, or Swirl own the code. Hedera owns the code, but it is open review. So everybody can view all of the code. So I know the thing that Hedera, people focus on Hedera is, hang on a second, this is not publicly available code. But actually, if you're going to have a real stable network here, and I completely understand the whole need for having publicly available code. If you're going to have a stable network that's really going to get deployed at the governance at the enterprise level, that's really going to link to the back-end systems, do you really think organizations want to have code that's going to be forking all over the place, that's going to be introducing security loopholes? They're not. So unapologetically, we have turned around and said, actually, in order to achieve true enterprise-grade stability, there has to be a level of governance here to drive adoption. And the reality is, DLT does not sit on its own. History is not going to change anything. If you look at mobility, look at AI, all of those started as great bits of technology standing on their own. What happens now? You link the core to the edge. You link the ERP, the HCM, the EAM to the edge, the new technologies. I come from Oracle Emerging Tech, part of the global leadership around industry. And I can tell you what we did there is we linked emerging tech, including blockchain, with Hyperledger Fabric, to the back end. And the reason we did that was because DLT does not stand on its own. You will link all of these systems together.
So you're not a public blockchain?
We're a public blockchain.
No, you're not a public blockchain because public people can't make any suggestions on how to change your code. You're just a company that made a product and you say maybe you'll be nice and listen to people if you like the things that they're telling you, but you control all of the code.
We've made a public blockchain for the enterprise. That's what we call it. We are the enterprise-grade public blockchain. Not even blockchain.
Okay, you can say those words, but you're not using them the way that we mean the words. Public blockchain means that anybody in the world can change the code.
Who's we? But it depends on how you do it. For the enterprise, if you look at enterprises don't turn around and say, look, everybody can change my code.
Of course not, because they're not public.
Yes, but the enterprises enterprises start to get joined up. They start to consciously uncouple, and start to use, interesting use of phrase, start to consciously uncouple and start to move out to the world and become more and more decentralized. There's still got to be governance in this thing. It can't be a free-for-all. You cannot have enterprise-grade systems that can split all over the place. It's not going to work. We won't get deployed. We'd be stuck in
you have
a
governance
technical discussion.
precisely not to split all over the place. That's the point. You have governance precisely in order not to split all over the place.
We have governance so it does not split over.
So the only thing that I think is worse than having a single company masquerading as a public blockchain but actually controlling all the code is trying to have people put their governance protocol onto their blockchain. The only thing that I think is worse than Hashgraph is Tezos in this regard.
Well, we allow.
How about the Quantum?
So we allow token holders to be part of the voting for a new amendment, so to upgrade the code essentially, so everybody can participate in the governance process, and this prevents arbitrary forks from happening, right? So that's the whole point.
People that are working on Tezos are obviously very nice people. But I'm not a very nice person, and so I like to play the game where I assume that everybody's like me. So if I were the people holding Tezos, I would accumulate as much Tezos as I can, and then change the governance of the protocol in order to shut everybody else out, so that I could have all of the money. And because that's the kind of person that I am, and I assume the rest of the world functions like that, I think that governance should be completely decoupled as much as possible from a network, so that you have a system where governance really should just be politics. People have to talk to each other. People have to work with each other. And miners, having them act in the middle as an intermediary between token holders and users of a network, they actually have an incentive to just make everybody get along. I think that's the best way. Just completely split governance away from a public network.
Yeah, I disagree, basically.
Okay.
But say more than I disagree.
Yeah. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So for Quantum, it's kind of we are simulated the big the Bitcoin governance, but we do want to like avoid like the hard fork of Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Satoshi version. Personally, I think it's kind of silly because people are like fighting for 1 megabyte to 2 megabyte block size. Yeah, it's not make sense technically. Yeah, it's kind of a culture reason, or like sometimes you can say it's more like a religion reason. People believe Satoshi, people believe technology, people believe Bitcoin is like gold. Yeah, so for Quantum, we want to avoid this kind of small debate in the community. So at the beginning, we deployed some smart contract to manage the parameters of the small change of the blockchain, like the block size, like the gas price, the gas limit, some like a small parameter. You do not really need a hard fork. You can just use a smart contract to update the parameter to the whole network. Yeah, but for the big update, like we wanted to implement a new virtual machine, the x86, or we want to implement some like a confidential asset feature, we do need the hard fork like a Bitcoin or like a Ethereum. Yeah, but also the quantum coin holder, they can vote for the change because the smart contract is public. If right now everyone want the quantum block size to become like from 2 megabyte to 10 megabyte, they can vote directly. If the voting is like more than 51%, the network will upgrade like automatically. So we designed these small parameter, and also for the big change, we do need a hard fork because we want the quantum become a public blockchain. Your voting really counts in the change. Yeah, we do not have kind of a centralized governance for the whole blockchain. Yeah.
Patrick, oh, sorry, Edward, do you want to jump in? Or?
Yeah, I was just going to say about that this idea that you can accumulate as much Tezos as possible in order to then evolve the governance in a nefarious direction. I mean, that has a huge cost in practice. You'd have to, it's the equivalent of doing a 51% attack on the network or something. So you'd have to spend, the whole point is you'd have to spend too much to be able to do that for it to be feasible.
Well, I don't mean like one person. I mean like the oligarchy of the top like 50 Tezos people. They just don't want anybody else to be able to say things. Once you get up there, you're like, the little people don't matter anymore.
I mean, so far we haven't seen any proposals to shut out everybody. So
that's a common problem for all the proof of stake blockchain. Yeah, no matter it's a DPoS or PBFT, all the big stakeholders, they control the network. But it's similar as Bitcoin, like the few mining pools, they can decide like to start the network. Yeah, so because I remember clearly when the Bitcoin hard fork happening, some of the mining pools in China, they do not produce the blocks. They spam the whole network. Yeah, they do not verify the block. They verify the empty block. So no one can package their transaction. Yeah, so because it's a permissionless blockchain, everyone can be evil in the network. Yeah, so that's a huge problem for the permissionless blockchain. But that's also the beautiful part. Everyone have the access. Yeah.
Anybody have any questions? In a loud voice, because there's no mics. Go ahead.
So if the government imposes a tax on any crypto, then they would be able to, like in the US where you have to pay to hold certain cryptos, whether it's Tezos or something else, it's the same thing, I think.
So I have strong thoughts on this. Oh, sorry. So his question was, if a government decides that they want to force people to pay tax on every transfer of crypto, for example, of Tezos, is that feasible? Can that be done with these public blockchains? And so my position is that if you're a proof of work, then the people that are transmitting money are miners. And miners are not money transmitters because they're anonymous, and there's no record of who you are actually as a miner, and because of probabilistic block settlement. You can never actually say, this was the block where I transmitted the money. As opposed to in a staking system, you have to know who you are because you have to have a certain amount of your currency actually staked, and you have to go through some sort of compliance process. And when you actually have a finality voting-based settlement system, you can point to the block and say, this is the block in which person X that has 15% stake signified this transaction, which means that then that's a transaction that you can actually go back and track the records. This is also why staking has potential problems with money transmitter licensing for US securities laws, whereas mining doesn't have those problems.
I think it's a great question. The SEC, I mean, as Hedera, we're looking at this almost on a daily basis. The SEC seems to be coming out with new rulings literally daily on this. So we're trying to make sure that, you know, for the network that you don't get classed as a security, etc. In which case that would be an issue for us. I mean, you make a fair point.
Any other questions? Just stand up and yell.
You're welcome.
But how,
Those are the good qualities. Wait a minute.
yeah, how do you defend the fact? Oh, there we go. It sort of works now. Surely you agree with the fact that there's a massive oligopoly when it comes to miners in Bitcoin. I mean, you just can't be blind to that, right?
Sure, I just think that miners, their interests lie in between the intersection of people that are token holders and people that are network users. And miners have an incentive to play nice and make everybody happy. Because if the token price goes up too much and then it becomes impossible to transact on the network, then no one will use it and nobody uses it, and then miners get sad because there are no more blocks for them to generate. But if the token price crashes, then miners are sad because they've spent all this money on hardware in order to try to create their mining rigs. And so you have this like perfect storm balance where the people that are actually actively maintaining the network are also the people that have the best incentive to try to make the network actually function and be balanced.
But then you centralize it around the people who've got the economic power to mine and you've got the cheapest energy in order to do so. So you've got a distributed system that is effectively becoming centralized around those with the most economic power.
Yeah, but anybody can decide that they want to spin up a mining rig and go find some cheap power. There's lots of cheap power.
There's not enough cheap power to me. Isn't it better if you can have a system where you can get to consensus from a laptop or something? Where you can
Personally, I think the whole industry do not really have any standard or any definition on what is centralization, what is decentralization. How can you compare the decentralization level of Bitcoin and Ethereum and with maybe EOS or with Quantum or Titles, other blockchain? Yeah. How can you really give them a score? Maybe Bitcoin decentralization is a score 100, and then what's the others? Yeah. I think that's a missing part in the whole industry. People, for all the average users, they do not really understand what's the meaning of the decentralization. Is that means everyone can validate the blockchain? Then it's a public blockchain, or is that means who control the blockchain? Yeah. So I think we do not really have the standard for what definition for the decentralization in the whole industry. Yeah.
That was very well said.
All right, I think one more question quickly.
Thank you. A quick question about the energy consumption of proof of work. Don't you really think that it's not a big problem because maybe this is just the cost for Internet of Assets compared to what payments transaction cost today? Has anybody done the comparison how much €1 payment using a credit card cost in energy compared to equivalent in Bitcoin or proof of work?
This is a good point. It's very hard to measure. And there have not been a lot of good research studies done on really where the power to drive Bitcoin comes from. There are a lot of fake news articles out there about Bitcoin consuming the small European countries worth of electricity, but we really haven't had any good academic studies. And meanwhile, you compare it to something like ACH or SWIFT, or these systems where people, banks all the time send money to the wrong place, and then they have to go back and open an audit trail and figure out where the money went and then claw it back and send it where it was supposed to go. There's a huge amount of inefficiency in the traditional banking system. And I think everybody up here on this stage is here because we think that the traditional banking system sort of sucks.
All right, guys, we ran out of time. I want to thank everyone on the panel. Really interesting. I think we know where everybody stands on the issues here, which is an accomplishment. And thank you guys for listening. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.